It happened in a heartbeat. 1 second, Emily was standing in line at the school cafeteria, chatting softly with her best friend, and the next, a sharp, humiliating snap tore through the air. She froze. Her face burned hot, her chest tightened, and the muffled laughter behind her told her exactly what had happened before she even turned around. A group of boys, known troublemakers, self-proclaimed kings of the school, had grabbed her bra strap and let it snap back in front of everyone. The sound seemed to echo louder than the chatter of the room. Phones were out recording. Whispers rose like wildfire. Emily's heart pounded. She wasn't the type to fight back, at least not physically. She'd always kept her head down, focused on her grades, avoiding drama. But in that moment she felt a storm rising in her. The cafeteria wasn't just a room full of students. It was a stage, and she had been turned into the punchline of a cruel joke. She wanted to disappear, but she knew disappearing would only make it worse. So she took a deep breath, straightened her back, and walked away, silently, but with a resolve she hadn't known she had. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to focus in class while her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from friends, screenshots of the video, her name plastered across social media. The comments hurt. Some called her overdramatic. Others said she should take it as a joke. But deep down, Emily knew this wasn't harmless. It wasn't a prank. It was harassment, plain and simple. And she wasn't going to let it slide. That night, she sat with her parents at the dining table, shaking as she played the video for them. Her father's jaw tightened, and her mother's eyes filled with tears. "We're not letting this go," her father said, his voice low but firm. Together, they made calls, first to the school principal, then to the district superintendent. But the school's initial response was disappointing. "We'll handle it internally," they said. "These are young boys who made a mistake." Emily could hear the unspoken message. They wanted it swept under the rug. But Emily wasn't alone. Her best friend Mia had also filmed the incident from a different angle, clearer, closer. In her video, you could see the boys laughing, see Emily's face crumple, see the deliberate cruelty in their smirks. Maya's father, who was a lawyer, stepped in. "This isn't a school prank," he told them. "This is assault, and if the school won't take action, the police will." The following week was a whirlwind. Emily gave a statement to the police. The videos, both the one that went viral and Maya's clearer footage, were handed over as evidence. The boys were called in for questioning. At first, their parents tried to defend them, claiming it was just teenage fun. But the reality hit hard when the police explained the legal implications. This wasn't just about embarrassment, it was about violation, consent, and safety. Meanwhile, Emily still had to walk the same hallways, eat in the same cafeteria, and face the stares. Some kids whispered their support, but others avoided her, afraid of getting involved. There were moments she felt like giving up, moments she wondered if speaking out had only made her life harder. But every time she thought about staying silent, she remembered the way they had laughed, and how small they had tried to make her feel. That thought kept her going. Months passed, and the case went to court. Emily testified, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. She told the judge how the incident had affected her, not just in the moment, but in the weeks afterward, when she couldn't sleep without replaying it in her head. The judge reviewed the video evidence, the testimonies, and the psychological report detailing Emily's anxiety. The verdict came down. The boys were found guilty of misdemeanor assault and harassment. They were sentenced to community service, mandatory counseling, and probation. For Emily, the most important part wasn't the punishment. It was the public acknowledgement that what had happened to her was wrong. After the case closed, Emily's story spread beyond her school. Local news outlets covered it, framing it as an important conversation about consent and respect. Parents in the community began talking to their kids about boundaries. The school implemented new policies, including stricter harassment consequences and consent education workshops. Emily stood a little taller now when she walked through the halls. She knew not everyone liked her for speaking out, but she also knew she had helped change something bigger than herself. The incident that was meant to humiliate her had, in the end, made her stronger. She had faced the storm, not by fighting with her fists, but by standing her ground and demanding justice. Emily's day had started like any other. The smell of coffee still lingered in the kitchen when she left home, her backpack heavy with textbooks. Her mind focused on the biology test later that morning. She wasn't the type to draw attention, just an ordinary high school junior who liked reading, sketching, and sitting with her small group of friends at lunch. But that day, the normal rhythm of her life was about to shatter in a single, humiliating moment. The cafeteria was buzzing with noise. Trays clattered, conversations overlapped, and the smell of pizza and fries filled the air. Emily stood in line, chatting quietly with Mia, her best friend since kindergarten. They were laughing about something small and silly when it happened. A sudden, sharp sting on her back, followed by the unmistakable sound of elastic snapping. She froze. Behind her, the sound of stifled laughter and a few gasps made her stomach drop. She turned just enough to see them. 3 boys from the basketball team, grinning like they had just pulled off the funniest prank in the world. One of them still had his phone out recording. Another was holding his stomach doubled over in laughter. Emily's face went hot. The humiliation was instant and overwhelming. It wasn't just the sting of the brass strap. It was the fact that they'd done it in front of dozens of people, that they'd made her body the center of their joke, that they had stripped her of her dignity in an instant. Funds were up, and she knew the video was already traveling from one screen to another like wildfire. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. Her throat was tight, her eyes burned, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She turned, tray still in hand, and walked out of the cafeteria. The laughter behind her was a knife she could feel between her shoulder blades. By the end of the day, the video had been posted to 3 different social media accounts, each with mocking captions. Some comments were cruel, calling her overdramatic, saying she couldn't take a joke. Others were worse, turning her into a meme, tagging her friends, making her a public spectacle. Emily scrolled through them in silence that night, her hands shaking, her stomach twisting in knots. Her parents found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone with tears running down her face. She didn't have to explain much. She just pressed play and let the video speak for itself. Her father's expression hardened as the video ended. "This isn't going away," he said. "We're not letting them get away with this." The next morning, Emily and her parents met with the school principal. He listened, watched the video, and then leaned back in his chair. "We understand your frustration," he said, "but they're minors. We'll handle this internally." His tone was calm, almost dismissive, as though this was no more serious than a cafeteria food fight. But Emily's father wasn't having it. "Handling it internally. You're talking about boys who sexually harassed my daughter on camera. That's not an internal matter. That's a criminal offense." The principal hesitated but didn't budge. It was clear the school wanted to sweep the incident under the rug to protect its reputation. But then Mia stepped in. She had also filmed the moment from a closer angle, clearer, sharper. You could see the boy's hand reaching out, the deliberate tug, Emily's startled reaction, and their cruel laughter. This wasn't blurry or ambiguous. This was undeniable evidence. Maya's father, a local lawyer, offered to help. He contacted the police, turning over both videos. The detective assigned to the case called it what it was: assault and harassment. "People think this is a joke," he told Emily, "but it's not. What happened to you is serious, and it's against the law." The investigation began. The boys were questioned, their parents called in. At first, they denied it, claiming it was just a prank. But when shown the video, the smirks faded from their faces. Their parents tried to downplay it, but the detective's explanation of the legal consequences changed everything. This wasn't about school discipline anymore. This was about a criminal record. For Emily, those weeks were some of the hardest of her life. She still had to go to school, still had to face the stares, still had to eat lunch in the same cafeteria where it had all happened. Some students whispered their support, others avoided her, and a few muttered under their breath that she had overreacted. But Emily didn't back down. Every day she reminded herself that speaking out was the only way to make sure this didn't happen to someone else. Months later, the case went to court. Emily stood before the judge, her voice steady as she described how the incident had made her feel, how it had taken away her sense of safety, how it had followed her into her sleep, how every laugh she heard in the hallway afterward made her flinch. The videos were played, the truth undeniable. The verdict came down. The boys were found guilty of misdemeanor assault and harassment. They were sentenced to probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. The judge made it clear, this was not just a prank, and it carried consequences. The story made headlines in their town. Parents began talking to their kids about boundaries, about respect, about consent. The school was forced to implement stricter policies and consent education programs. Emily didn't feel like a hero. She still carried the scars of that day. But she also carried the knowledge that she had stood her ground when it would have been easier to stay silent. The moment they tried to humiliate her had instead become the moment she found her strength. And from then on, whenever she heard laughter in the hallway, it didn't make her shrink. It reminded her that she had turned pain into justice, and that no one, no matter how powerful they thought they were, had the right to take her dignity away.